I'm standing here today at the base of what is known as the Screaming Cross in the churchyard of St. Michael and All Angels Church. It stands 63 feet or 19 meters tall and was erected here in 1849. It was designed by an architect called Charles Robert Cockerell, and it took the place of an older cross which had stood here since the 16th century. And that older cross, well, its shaft had become so worn with erosion that it had to be taken down. But rather than throw it away, the powers that be decided to make good use of it, and they incorporated it into the base of this newer, larger cross. So if you look down there, you can see the remains of that older shaft within the base of the new one. But why is this new cross known as the Screaming Cross? Well, it's not because it's particularly noisy, though. I could probably imagine it being so when the wind whistles through those open arches up top. No, the story goes that this cross was named thusly due to a strange noise, which was heard coming from the direction of the church just before the French Revolution, a noise so loud that it was said to have been heard all across London, even as far away as Windsor. What was this noise? How did it come to be associated with this particular cross? Well, let me tell you. But first, if you're enjoying today's video and you haven't yet subscribed, then do please consider subscribing. It's free, and it helps me to reach more people with these videos. It's believed that the noise which shook London on that fateful night in 1789 came from this spot right here. The story goes that just after midnight, a large gust of wind blew through the valley, causing the shutters on the east end of the church to suddenly fly open. This revealed the open arches which lie behind them, which are actually quite a striking feature of the church's interior. They were added during the major restoration of the church, which was undertaken by Sir George Gilbert Scott between 1846 and 1848. Now, in 1848, archaeologists were excavating the site where the new cross would eventually be placed, when they uncovered the remains of a medieval priest and 3 of his parishioners, who had been buried together in the graveyard. It's believed that this small group of people were praying together when they were suddenly blown open by that strong wind, revealing the shuttered openings on the east end of the church. Those shutters, which had been nailed shut from the outside, flew open and they fell off their hinges. As they did so, they knocked against each other and made a loud banging sound as they continued to swing back and forth in the wind. Then, to make matters worse, the heavy doors themselves began to shake, and they too started to bang against the door frames, making the sound even louder. This went on for some time, frightening those that were unlucky enough to hear it. The following morning, when everyone had calmed down a bit, people came out to investigate. It was then that they noticed the position of the open arches. And those who were knowledgeable about the church knew that these openings were constructed in such a way that whenever the wind blew through the valley, it would cause them to swing back and forth in exactly the same way that the doors had been doing the evening before. There are lots of theories about why this might have happened. Some say that the church was cursed, while others believe that it was simply a case of coincidence. However, it seems more likely that the force of the wind, combined with the design of the building itself to create a natural acoustic phenomenon known as a whistling gallery. This occurs when air is forced through a narrow opening, such as these shutters would have provided. The air moves at high speed, which causes it to vibrate and create a sound. So we know what happened, and we have a rough idea of why it happened. But how was this event linked to the cross that stands in the middle of the churchyard? Well, it seems that those responsible for building it chose this location precisely because of the story. The architect even wrote about it in his journal, stating, "The cross stands exactly in the spot where the noise was heard." To make the connection even more clear, he also designed the base of the cross to incorporate part of the old churchyard cross, which had stood here since the 16th century. The old cross, which had weathered away to nothing but a stump, was placed inside the base of the new cross as if it were screaming. But this isn't the only curious thing about this cross. When it was built, the local townspeople objected to its construction because it was so tall. They believed that it would be visible from every part of the town, and that it was too grand and imposing for the village. They also didn't like the fact that it had replaced the old cross, which they liked very much. However, the church authorities pressed ahead with the project regardless and built it anyway. While it may seem a little odd to us today, this wasn't the first time that the placement of a cross had caused controversy. Just over 20 years earlier, the people of Liverpool had objected to the placement of a cross on the roof of Liverpool Cathedral. That cross, which stood 100 feet tall, was considered an eyesore, and people complained that it made the building look like a huge candlestick. But once again, it was erected anyway. In this case, though, the people got their way, and the cross was later removed. However, unlike in Liverpool, the people of Windsor never got their way. And that's why we still have the screaming cross standing here in the middle of the churchyard today. I am now going to hand you over to my friend Harry, who's going to take you inside the church to see the magnificent interior and arches which were added during the aforementioned restoration by Sir George Gilbert Scott. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please do leave me a like and do consider supporting me through the links below the video. You can also check out my social media channels. I'd love to have you join me over there too. Thank you so much once again for watching, and I very much hope to see you again very soon. Bye. It was one of those ordinary days at school. As usual, students were running around in the corridors. Some of them were fighting while others were trying to avoid trouble. But today, all eyes were on a boy with an extraordinary gift or a curse. His name was Daniel. Ever since he started speaking, he has spoken in two voices. It didn't matter if it was his parents, teachers, or other kids. Everyone was shocked when they heard him speak for the first time. Daniel was only 4 years old when he spoke for the first time, and ever since then, he spoke in two voices. He couldn't control this ability of his, and neither did he want to. He had lived with it for so long that it was a part of him now. You see, Daniel had two souls inside his body. They shared the same face and physical features. They also had the same name and last name. They looked identical, but their voices were different, and so were their personalities. One had a deep voice like an adult male, and the other sounded exactly like a little kid. Daniel was called a medical marvel, and experts from all over the country came to see him. Doctors diagnosed him with a rare mental illness and prescribed him a bunch of pills. But no medication could get rid of this other self inside him. Daniel had to live a normal life despite having two different souls. He attended school just like any other kid. When he started talking to his classmates, they would hear two voices coming out of him. At first, it was hard for him because they often argued with each other. You could say that having two completely different personalities made life very difficult for Daniel. That's why he always preferred being alone. He loved reading books about mythical creatures and other fictional characters because he felt connected to them. Unlike him, these beings were not ashamed of who they are. The other kids didn't understand what was happening to him. When they tried to talk to Daniel, they would hear the second voice coming out of him. This was the voice of his evil alter ego. He often used this voice to tease Daniel. He would make fun of him in front of his classmates, calling him weird and strange. Sometimes Daniel would try to ignore him, but most times he would defend himself. This is when the two voices would start arguing. Soon, all the other kids would join in and laugh at Daniel, so he started keeping to himself. One day, Daniel got tired of being bullied by his evil alter ego and decided to take action. He went to the bathroom and locked himself inside one of the stalls. He was desperate to get rid of this other self once and for all. "Leave me alone," he shouted. "I'm sick and tired of you making my life miserable." All of a sudden, Daniel felt a sharp pain in his chest. He fell to the floor and blacked out. A few minutes later, he woke up and noticed that there was no one else in the bathroom. It was empty. Daniel got scared and ran out of the building. He didn't know where he was going, but he kept running until he reached the park. As soon as he stopped, Daniel felt another sharp pain in his chest. He fell down on his knees and cried out loud. An old woman who was sitting on a nearby bench stood up and walked over to him. She asked what happened to him and why he was crying. But Daniel couldn't answer. He was in too much pain. The old woman knew that something was wrong. She helped Daniel stand up and led him to her car. Then she drove him to the hospital. When the doctors examined him, they couldn't find anything wrong. They checked his brain with an MRI machine, but it showed that everything was fine. Daniel was sent home without a diagnosis. His parents were worried sick. They stayed up all night and didn't let him out of their sight. Daniel felt their love and care, but he was still scared. He couldn't stop thinking about the pain in his chest. He was sure that the other self was still inside him, but it wasn't arguing anymore. It was quiet and seemed to be plotting something evil. A few days passed, and Daniel's parents took him to a different hospital. Here, a team of experts examined him and performed several tests, but none of them could find anything wrong with him. Meanwhile, Daniel grew more and more tired. He slept most of the time, and when he was awake, he couldn't concentrate on anything. His grades dropped significantly. One day, Daniel was sitting in his room when he heard a knock on the door. He opened it and saw a man in a black suit standing in front of him. "Are you Daniel?" the man asked. "Yes," replied Daniel. "My name is David. I'm here to tell you that you have been chosen." "Chosen for what?" Daniel asked. The man smiled and said, "You will soon find out." Before Daniel could ask any more questions, David handed him a card with an address written on it. "Go there tomorrow at noon and ask for Francais. He will explain everything to you." With that, David turned around and left the house. Daniel's parents were shocked. They tried to talk him out of going, but he insisted, so they had no other choice but to let him go. The next day, Daniel put on a black shirt and black pants. He combed his hair and left the house. He didn't know what to expect, but he was determined to find out the truth. When he arrived at the address, he saw that it was an old abandoned building. Daniel hesitated for a moment, but then he knocked on the door. It opened with a creak, and a man with gray hair and a long white beard appeared. "You must be Daniel," he said. "Come with me." Daniel entered the room and saw a circle drawn on the floor with chalk. In the middle of it was a book lying open. As soon as Daniel stepped into the circle, the book slammed shut. Francis approached him and said, "I am the keeper of this place. I have been waiting for you." "Waiting for me? Waiting for what?" Daniel asked. "For you to discover your true identity, of course." Francis handed him a dagger and said, "This will help you find the answers you seek." Daniel took the dagger and stabbed it into his chest. As he did so, he felt a jolt of electricity run through his body. He screamed in pain, but then everything went black. When he woke up, Daniel found himself in a dark room. There was a window in the corner, but it was boarded up. He tried to stand up, but his legs felt weak. Suddenly, the door opened, and a bright light filled the room. Daniel shielded his eyes and saw a figure standing in the doorway. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am you and you are me. We are one," the figure replied. "But how can this be?" Daniel asked. "You are my other self. Together we are complete." The figure approached Daniel and smiled. "I am the part of you that has always been ignored. I am the part that has been suppressed. I am the part that has been denied." Daniel stared at his reflection in the figure's eyes and realized that it was true. We are both parts of the same soul. We are both halves of the same coin. We are both sides of the same story. The figure reached out and touched Daniel's cheek. "I am sorry for what I have done to you in the past, for the pain and the suffering I have caused you. But now it is time for us to move forward together." Daniel knew that the figure was right. He had carried the burden of his other self for far too long. It was time to let go of the past and embrace the present. "I am sorry too," he whispered. "I am sorry for not accepting you, for not embracing you, for not loving you." The figure smiled again. "It is all in the past now. Let us look to the future." Daniel reached out and took the figure's hand. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, feeling the connection between them. Then they walked out of the room together. Daniel was no longer afraid. He was no longer ashamed. He was no longer alone. He had his other self with him, and together they were whole. A man walks into a room and sees a wall with a handprint in it. He reaches out to touch it, and suddenly the wall disappears, and he finds himself in another place. Then he does it again and returns home. A similar experience happens to a second man. Is this just some strange coincidence, or is there something more going on here? Stay till the end of the video to find out what's really happening. Deep within an ancient forest, a young hiker named Thomas stumbled upon a clearing that left him mesmerized. Towering above him was a stone monolith covered in strange symbols and markings. It felt as if the very air around it hummed with a mystical energy. But one detail in particular captured Thomas's attention. Etched into the rock face was a handprint. Not just any handprint, but one that seemed almost otherworldly in its detail. The lines were crisp, the fingers slender, and the thumb marked a perfect circle. It was as if the print had been made only moments ago. Yet this was in a place untouched by modern man for centuries. Curiosity surged through Thomas. He reached out, his fingers tracing the lines of the handprint. And then, the most extraordinary thing happened. The world around him rippled like water disturbed by a stone. The ancient forest vanished, replaced by a vast, echoing void. Thomas stood in a place that defied comprehension, a realm where the laws of nature seemed to be rewritten. He was surrounded by landscapes that shouldn't have existed, places that time and science could not explain. But it wasn't just the scenery that changed. The very essence of the world shifted. Gravity seemed to lessen its pull, allowing stones that moments ago were firmly rooted to the earth to now float gently in the air. The sky, once a familiar blue, now swirled with colors unknown, a kaleidoscope of hues that danced and shifted in an eternal twilight. Even time itself appeared too slow, each second stretching into an eternity. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant hum of a reality humming on the edge of perception. Terrified, yet exhilarated, Thomas realized he wasn't dreaming. This was real, tangible, and he was at the center of it. Fear turned to wonder as he looked back at the monolith, hoping for answers, only to find that it too had shifted. The handprint, his handprint, was now the only entrance to this alien realm. Trapped between two worlds, Thomas knew he needed to find a way back. He closed his eyes, willing the world to shift back. When he opened them, he found himself standing in the shadow of the monolith once again. The ancient forest around him was unchanged, the handprint no longer glowing. Relief washed over him as he recognized the comforting sight of the trees and the sound of birdsong. He had returned, but the world he left behind, that world of swirling colors and altered laws, beckoned to him still. He yearned to understand its mysteries and to find a way back. But how? The answer, it seemed, lay in the handprint. With renewed determination, Thomas decided to study the print, to analyze it, to understand it. Day after day, he returned to the clearing, poring over the handprint, searching for clues. His scientific mind tried to dissect the mystery, seeking a rational explanation. But the more he studied, the deeper he fell into a rabbit hole of confusion. The handprint offered no clear answers. Just when his hope began to dwindle, a tiny detail caught his eye. It was barely perceptible, almost lost in the texture of the rock. Yet it held the key to unraveling the mystery of the handprint. With a pounding heart, he traced the line, and as his fingertip touched the exact spot, the world around him shimmered once again. The forest faded, and he found himself in the midst of the swirling colors and floating rocks. But this time, he was prepared. He reached out, touching the rock not with fear, but with understanding. He closed his eyes, feeling the energy surge through him. And when he opened them, he saw not the endless void, but the forest around him. The world spun, but not away from him. It was coming towards him. With a jolt, he found himself standing in the shadow of the monolith once again. The handprint glowed faintly on the rock face. And in that moment, Thomas understood. He had discovered a way to manipulate the very fabric of reality. The handprint was a doorway, a portal to a dimension beyond human understanding, and he was its key. Years passed, and Thomas became a renowned scientist. His name echoed in the halls of academia, but his greatest discovery remained a secret known only to him. He delved deep into the mysteries of the handprint, learning to control the shifts in reality, bending them to his will. He discovered that the handprint responded to his thoughts, his emotions, his very essence. With careful precision, he learned to use the handprint to traverse the realms, collecting data, observing, understanding. The more he explored, the more he realized the depths of his discovery. The handprint was a connection to a universe existing alongside our own, a universe governed by different laws, a universe filled with wonders and possibilities that defied human imagination. One day, while exploring the realms, Thomas stumbled upon a new landscape. It was unlike anything he had seen before, beautiful and strange. As he walked, he noticed a figure in the distance. At first he thought it was a hallucination, a figment of his altered perception. But as he approached, the figure became clearer. It was a man, yet not like any man he had ever seen. The man turned, revealing a face of unearthly beauty, his eyes shimmering with wisdom and his skin glowing with an inner light. The man smiled, his teeth gleaming white against his dark skin. "You have found me," he said, his voice echoing with power. "I have been waiting for you." Thomas, stunned by the man's words, found himself drawn to him. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "I am the guardian of this realm," the man replied, "and you, Thomas, are the key to its balance." Thomas's life took an unexpected turn when he met the enigmatic guardian of the alien realm. Under the guardian's guidance, Thomas learned that the handprint was not just a doorway to another dimension, it was a conduit between two parallel universes. Each universe was a fragment of a greater whole, and the handprint allowed him to travel between them. But this knowledge came with a heavy responsibility. The guardian revealed that the two universes were in danger, their delicate balance threatened by an unknown force. Only Thomas, with his unique ability to bridge the realms, could restore the equilibrium. Confused and overwhelmed, Thomas struggled to comprehend his new purpose. The guardian sensed his turmoil and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to do this alone," he said, his voice radiating calm. "I will guide you, I will teach you." So began Thomas's new journey. He learned to harness the full potential of the handprint, mastering the art of interdimensional travel. He explored the furthest reaches of both universes, witnessing wonders that defied his wildest dreams. Along the way, he uncovered secrets that connected the two realms, secrets that explained the handprint's existence and the purpose of his journey. But as he delved deeper, he also encountered challenges and dangers. Forces that sought to exploit the handprint's power opposed him. Creatures from the darkest corners of the alien realm hunted him, sensing the threat he posed to their existence. Through it all, Thomas persevered, driven by his sense of responsibility and guided by the enigmatic guardian. He faced each challenge head-on, learning and growing with every obstacle. His scientific mind sought to understand, to analyze, while his heart yearned to help, to heal. As his journey continued, Thomas realized that the true power of the handprint lay not just in traversing dimensions, but in connecting hearts and minds. In the end, it was his empathy, his compassion, and his courage that became his greatest assets. The climax of his journey led him to a confrontation with the very forces that threatened to destroy the balance of the universes. With the help of the Guardian and newfound allies from both realms, Thomas faced his destiny. The battle was fierce, testing the limits of his abilities and resolve. But in the end, it was his unwavering belief in the power of connection, of understanding that led to victory. In the aftermath of the battle, Thomas found a sense of peace and belonging he had never known. He had become the bridge between two worlds, a symbol of unity and harmony. And as he looked up at the sky, he saw not just stars, but a tapestry of infinite possibilities, a reminder of the boundless potential that lay within him. And so the tale of Thomas, the scientist who unlocked the secrets of the handprint on the wall, echoed through the ages, inspiring wonder and reminding all who heard it that the greatest discoveries are often hidden in plain sight, waiting for those with the courage to touch them.